Greetings. The Adrian Dominican Sisters welcome you to a presentation of A Sister Story. I am Sister Peg O'Flynn, and today we're having a conversation with our sister Mary Jane Clark. And Mary Jane lives in Marina, California. She'll tell us where that exactly is. I didn't get the map out. So just sit back and enjoy the conversation. And welcome, Mary Jane. Thank you for your quick and prompt response to the invitation. It meant a lot. So this is your 30 minutes to get your whole lifetime, in, and just give us the high points so that we can just know you a little bit better. So to begin, let's begin where your journey began. So if you tell us where you were born and your family, your siblings, and what family life was like in Mayfield, Kentucky. Okay, so that's you.
Good. Well, in Mayfield, Kentucky, was where I was born. My father was Henry Glass Clark of Irish and Scottish descent.
Right.
And my mother was Mary Ann Andrejka Clark of Czechoslovakian descent.
Okay.
And I was born in Kentucky because my father was in the service. And when it was time for Mom to have me, we went to his hometown, and she gave birth to me, and 2 years later gave birth to my brother Henry in the same place. As an infant.
Where's that near, Mary Jane?
Well, I don't know if this will help you any, but Paducah.
Yeah.
So it's north west corner of Kentucky.
Okay.
And so during my infancy, my mother and I traveled with my dad to different camps in Florida and Nebraska and Kansas. He was a cook in the Army.
Oh, nice.
And when she was expecting my brother, we went back to Kentucky, and he was born there. And I spent much of my first 5 years in Kentucky with my dad's great parents on a tobacco farm.
Okay.
And my brother and I stayed with my grandparents while Dad finished up the service. And then afterwards, Mom and Dad went to Detroit to look for a home and work jobs. So that's when until I was just short of 5 years old, we were still with my grandparents. And then we moved to Detroit. And my sister was born when I was 7 years old. That was Patty.
Oh.
And my mother didn't work for the time that Patty was not in school. So we had grand times with my mother. She was a fun person.
Oh,
all the kids in the neighborhood joined in while Mom played games with us. Some she made up, and then she sang songs with us. So she was the neighborhood mom too.
Whereabouts in Detroit did you live?
Well, we moved
west side.
One time for 2 years we lived on the east side.
Okay,
that was the last, but most of the time it was on the west side.
Okay,
and we moved into several different places on the west side. But How
did your brother like having another sister?
Well, my brother was we called him the funny one. He had a sense of humor, and he teased the heck out of both of us, no matter what it was. So
that's what brothers are for.
Yes, exactly. I was the big sis of the family. Being the oldest in a Southern family, tradition kind of thing is that the oldest is called sis or sissy, and that was my name by all of our relatives and by my brother and sister, and now my nephews and great nephews all call me Auntie Sis. So, and I was the big sis. Once Mom went back to work, I took care of my brother and sister and did the housework and had a lot of responsibility. And
where'd you go to school?
St. Dominic's.
Okay.
In Detroit, St. Dominic, and there is a question about schools, and that was my fondest, best memories of growing up was at St. Dominic's School in Detroit.
Were we there? Were the Adrian Dominican?
They were Adrian Dominican Sisters. We had Adrian Dominican Sisters, and the priests were Dominican priests too. Okay. So it just was a very special place. But one of the is this a question where we were just a really close knit family?
Good.
That had lots of fun times. That during many of our Sundays, because Dad worked 6 days a week. We would take off and go on family picnics to Belle Isle in Detroit. That's some of the local places in.
I'm a Detroiter, so I'm very familiar.
So
with
these
highlights.
Yes, Belle Isle was a favorite place for us when we were young because it had good area and everything. My family was very close knit. I had an extended family too because I was raised, by my grandparents. So I felt unconditional love. I mean, it was just I never doubted for 1 minute the love that my family had for me and the caring. And they put, as I said, I had a lot of responsibility, but I always felt that we had a lot of trust too. Mm-hmm. We always felt safe and protective. Mm-hmm. And my mother had a very strong faith. She influenced us with that strong faith and her devotion to the Blessed Mother.
Right.
My father was not Catholic, but when they were married in the church, he made a promise to raise us Catholic, and he supported my mother in everything, and even in the Catholic education. So
that's wonderful. Mm-hmm. That's very good. So what about high school?
Well, if I could talk a little bit more about St. Dominic's, if that was all right. Because St. Dominic's is where this place where I probably was as I said, they had the most loving sisters, and that it influenced me more than anything is because of the community that we had there. It was what I called an inner city school before that term was even a term. In my 8th grade class, we had 28 children. And in that class alone, 10 different ethnic groups and 5 different languages spoken in the family. And we all just did so many things together. And the sisters led us in that. And I felt very, very attached and got my vocation, which maybe I'll talk about later on that. From those dear sisters. So
good.
Then I went to Visitation High School. Which was only about 3 miles down the road. And I went there for my freshman and sophomore year. And again, the sisters were mentors. They were caring, supportive, and besides being excellent teachers. Mm-hmm. And Visitation was a small school. So we knew everybody. I went to all the basketball games and football games and sock hops and everything. Very much a community. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, what St. Dominic's really was a community.
Just like your family.
It was an extension of the family. Mm-hmm. And the families at St. Dominic's, not so much Visitation, but St. Dominic's, you knew all of the moms and dads and everything because we just did so many things together. Had lots of sleepovers and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, and we still, many of us keep in touch today.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not so, my junior and senior year, my dad was transferred to Milwaukee. Oh. And so I spent junior and senior year, and the experience was totally different. It was Pius the 11th High School in Milwaukee. Franciscan sisters, not quite as friendly as the Adrian Dominicans. And it was a large school, 2,200 plus. 602 in my graduating class. So needless to say, it was not a similar experience to Visitation. And I happened to have 2 priests during that time that became my mentors and my support, and kept in touch with me even after I entered. But it was just not the same memories. Mm-hmm. So, yes.
And then you graduated.
I graduated from Pius in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And entered the convent.
So
and
how did the whole vocation thing go with?
One of my favorite stories, if you don't mind me.
No, I love it.
I one time had to give a talk to the Sarah Club had a vocation day, and my story was about that they asked, talk about your calling. And I said, it was a very distinct, at least in my mind, calling. And it started in first grade with Sister James Joseph, Mary Connolly. I absolutely fell in love with her and all the other sisters that were there. And I mean that literally. I just couldn't say or do enough. And at St. Dominic's, the sisters, I lived close at that time for the first 5 years there. Lived close to the school, and I stayed after school and helped all the teachers. And I even went in on Fridays, and they had their soft veils on, and I helped to clean the convent. And my fourth grade teacher was Sister Charlotte Francis. God rest her soul. She just passed away.
I know, she's a dear. I knew her.
Oh my God. We have kept in touch all of these years.
A gentle woman.
Yes. And I would help her every night after school. And she said, Mary, I'm saying 3 Hail Marys daily for you, so that for your religious vocation. And that, to me, that was a sign.
Very good.
Besides already being attached to the sisters, and she kept that up. And to the day I think she died, I'm sure she was still saying those 3 Hail Marys. And then I even took Sister Jane Patrice. Ahern, right? What's her first name?
We just Catherine
Ahern. Yes,
Catherine
Jane
Ahern.
Patrice. My name was Mary Jane, and for confirmation, I took her name Patrice because I thought it was such a beautiful combination. So she always greets me warmly when we see each other in Adrian. And so I talked about being a nun from first grade on. And I had an 8th grade teacher, Sister Helen Walsh, Rose Michaeline, at that time. And she said, Mary, would you stop telling everyone you're going to be a nun because you're too boy crazy? And so I fooled her.
Good for you.
Yeah.
She was so enjoyable. She was a great woman.
Great. She and I were in the same mission group while she was out here, and we had delightful visits and kept in touch. She was very good to my parents and family, too, while we were at Dominic's. And afterwards. And anyway, I have to say I wasn't boy crazy, but I did like the attention of the boys. So during my freshman and sophomore years at Visitation, I didn't talk too much about being a nun. And unbeknownst to me, Sister Helen Mary, and I don't remember Helen Mary's last name, she joined the cloisters shortly after I entered the convent. But during the middle of a English final, came up to me and just whispered while I was taking the final, Mary, have you ever thought about being an Adrian Dominican sister? Well, she threw me for a loop because I had never talked about it, never mentioned it to anyone at Visitation. And she threw me for a loop and made me angry even. I thought, what is she interfering with that? No, anyway.
Right.
Well, it still was a part of the calling, wasn't it? She said that. Right. So at the end of that year, I moved to Milwaukee. And again, during junior, senior year, I didn't talk about being a nun at all. And I had one of those priests, Father Alberts, mentioned to me my senior year. He said, Mary, I see something very special about you. You're different than most of the other girls in my homeroom. And he said, do you ever think about being religious? And I would look again, out of the blue. I said, Father, I used to think about it. And I just haven't kept that going. And he said, I think you should go to daily mass during Lent this year and pray about that. So sure enough, at the end of Lent, Easter's break, I wrote Sister Helen Mary and asked her if she would help me into the convent. She was the one who.
What about your parents during this time? How did they feel about your
Well,
decision?
I always said my vocation came from my mother,
Right.
because she was such a faith-filled and caring, and she was a good teacher. She was good with kids, and her devotion to the Blessed Mother. So I always thought. But the funny thing about it is my dad was the one, the non-Catholic, who was the most supportive and told me, sis, if you don't try it, you will be sorry for the rest of your life. He said, go and try it, but know that your room is still ready for you at Christmas time, when I'm sure by Christmas you'll be home. And he said that for the next 5 or 6 years. Your room is still here. But he supported me totally, absolutely. So it just was meant to be that I would become a sister. And I felt that it was a calling that was very clear. And the people that were put in my life there.
Were the Franciscans, were they surprised at your decision, or did they know?
Well, let me tell you, Father Albers evidently got the word out, and that I was considering entering. So they started, I say, courting me. And courting meaning trying to make me change my mind. And here's what really threw me, because one of the sisters took me up the 5th floor of this school was the convent. And she took me up there and she showed me their community room. Peg, it was a room with 30 desks facing each other, rows and rows of desks. And I looked at her and I said, community room? What do you mean? She said, well, we spend a lot of time at the desk checking papers and everything when we can have recreation. I went, oh, no, thank you. Because I had already spent my 8 years in the convent over at St. Dominic's, which was the homiest place you ever.
Right. Oh, gosh. Oh,
so,
that's nice.
Needless to say, it was very always the Adrian Dominicans.
Okay. So then you entered, and where did you enter? How old were you when you entered?
I was just short of 18.
Yeah. So just like
entered June 26th and July 9th. Mm-hmm.
The majority of us were those June people.
Yeah.
So then you had a couple of years of formation in Adrian. And
I went out to teach as a postulate.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Interesting story. It's off all the questions. Is it all right?
Yeah. Do
we have time?
We have time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one morning we had these morning sessions with Margaret Phillip, and she talked all about giving ourselves totally to God. And, you have to say yes, and you have to and it just hit me, and I started weeping. And at the end of the session, she came to me and sitting in the desk there, and she said, Mary, what is wrong with you? And I said, I can't do it. I cannot give myself totally to God. And she said, what? And I said, oh, and I thought in my mind, I'm gone, because every day some of them were going home. This is it, I'm gone. And she said, why? And I said, I miss male companionship too much. Oh. And I went, oh, you stupid little girl. She lifted me out of her seat, took me in her arms, and hugged me to death and said, welcome to the human race.
Oh,
if you don't think that made the biggest difference in my life. And then she sent me out as a postulate. And I
hope
knew
you told her how significant that was later on.
I did.
Yeah.
When I came in December to ask her permission to receive the veil.
Good.
Do you know what her only question was? Mary, how are the male companions? I am positive, sent me out to see if I could be out there and not have and still have that vocation as true. And we laughed every time we met then afterwards, the male companions.
That's good. So then you went to others. So your ministries were basically in Illinois, Michigan, and teaching, and California. Now you were out in California in the 70s, and
74.
Still there. Oh my word. And so What have you been
Well,
engaged in ministerially out there?
well,
Teaching?
40 years of education.
Wonderful.
20,
Wonderful.
23 or 23 years in teaching, all the grades 1 through 8, and 17 years as principal in San Carlos of Monterey.
Oh.
And so I was a born teacher. And I knew
okay.
I used to take the neighborhood kids in and play school with them and be the teacher and be the, in charge.
That's nice.
Brought papers and books and everything home. So I loved it. I loved every teaching experience, but my favorite years were when I was teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that age of student. And they used to say, you're tough, but you're fair. And that's the same kind of call I got when I became a principal. You're tough, but you're fair.
And did you meet many male people as you were out there on mission?
Oh, yes, a few.
That's cute.
Yes.
That's good. That's good.
But so San Carlos School reminded me of St. Dominic's School.
Okay.
Because it was a close-knit community. I had the fondest memories there for those 17 years. It just was a really special community of loving, caring, very prayerful. We had morning assembly every morning, and we prayed for everybody's intentions that they brought forth. It just was a real wonderful experience for me. And after education, I had no idea what I was going to do, but my mother got sick. She was aging, and she had 2 major surgeries. So I was able to go home and spend several months taking with her while she recuperated, and found out that I really was good with aging.
Good.
And with, even while she was a patient, I was communicating with all of her fellow patients in her rooms and things. So when I came home, I got a position at Villa Sera, which is a senior residence, and it was run by the Diocese of Monterey and are in code with Dominican Hospital in Santa Cruz.
Right.
And I loved it. I was in assisted living. I was right on the floor with all of the senior clients that I had, and I was good. It was a physical, emotional, but very spiritual experience. The seniors responded to me because I was a good listener, and very patient and kind. So I spent close to 3 years there, and then I went into private home care because one of the daughters of a patient I had there, or a client I had there, invited me, because she could no longer stay at Villa Sera, to come and stay with her and in her home. So that began several years of private senior care. And I have to say that the 3 clients I had became family to me, and also so did their families. I became very close, and it was just a truly rewarding experience. I loved listening to the seniors' stories and caring for their needs.
Where do you get your energy from? You seem very energizing and enjoy life.
You're going to... That's part of how I love religious life.
And you really began your religious life with your mom and dad and that family.
Right. Yeah. My family. Yeah. Another aside here about Dad. My dad was Southern. He sounded just like a Southern fellow all his life. He lived to be 70. And for many years, I asked him if he wanted to be Catholic. And he always said, "No, honey, I don't want to. I don't need to be Catholic." He says, "I see what you." And well, my brother said when my dad was on his last 6 months of living, he said, "Sis, when's the last time you asked Dad if you want to be Catholic?" I said, "Years, Wayne," or Aunt Henry. And he said, "I think you should ask him." My dad was baptized and given communion by my mother and me.
Oh my.
4 months before he died. The greatest gift. He said, Well, honey, I might as well become one. I've been living like one for the last 50 years. So,
what a blessing.
Our neighborhood priest. My mother was always very, very close with the priest and worked with in the parishes, rectories. And the parish priest called my dad the good thief. Henry stole heaven, folks.
Oh.
Henry didn't have to worry about what his previous life was or anything. He stole heaven.
Well, that's beautiful. Yeah,
it is. Absolutely.
Now, is there a lesson that you learned about yourself in your life? Now, we've all had experiences, some challenging, some most blessed, but we had some challenging times in our life. Not that we want details, but did you learn something about yourself in the process of a challenge?
Yes. I had two traumatic experiences in my 60 years. One of them was a serious car accident that Sister Jean Williams and I had in 1987. And I had a punctured intestine and a broken back. And I spent a month in Dominican hospital and 3 months in a back brace. And was out of my administration for close to 5 months.
Wow.
And so I learned during that time, first, the power of prayer. I literally, during my month in the hospital, felt prayer happening all around me because of all the decisions the doctors had to make and what was going on. And then because I couldn't take care of my administrative role, I learned that I had to depend on others. And that was a big jump because, Adrian Dominican Sisters did it all.
But you're yourself, never mind Adrian Dominican Sisters, you as a person that was modeled to you from your family life. And that's just part of who you are. I mean, that I can tell by everything that you've been involved in. And to be able to be so vulnerable to accept someone's help. That's
and the other thing,
thank
you. So I know that the accident was a gift because I also learned not to sweat the small stuff, that all the little details and things that we all paid so close, that I paid so much attention to was not important. I learned how to separate what I had to deal with and what I could just drop. Then the other incident that was traumatic was I was transitioned out of my 17 years as principal. Transitioned out was the word that were used by my pastor, but I was fired. And that was devastating. I was a good principal and I knew it. We just had differences. And I had been under his, pastorship for, 6-8 years at least. But anyway, I got transitioned out. And so that became a time of devastation and fear and lack of trust and resentment and anger and all kinds of feelings that I had to process and resolve. And I had a year to do it. The congregation gave me a year to do that. That's also the time my mother got sick. So I had that time to go. And that too became the most prayerful and life-discerning time I had after the accident and this. And in both of those times, I learned that I was not in control. That you thought you had control, but you didn't. So you talked about questions of mantras. One of my mantras became let go and let God.
Wonderful. You lived it.
And I transitioned into the senior care, again, by the power of the Holy Spirit, giving me my mother and giving me the seniors to take care of. So I was devastated. I never knew that I would do anything other than be an educator. So.
Well, I know you've got a lot more to tell us, but our time is coming to a close. And you've told us a lot. You've told me a lot in your story so far. You are most resilient. I know we as a congregation are talking about resilient communities. And I think the evidence of resilience in our congregation with each of us individually and you look back at your life, you're just a wonderful mentor to us on how to be resilient and how to deal with challenges, which are so hard. And you still have that smile on your face. So is there any one message that you want to leave with us about life?
If I could.
Please.
You had the question about the pandemic, and my experience of the pandemic was overpowered by the death of my sister Patty.
Your sister, yes.
Yes.
I remember.
But again, the time I had 7 months in Michigan because I couldn't travel.
Oh, wonderful.
It became as difficult a time it was because we couldn't see Patty and everything. It became a life-giving time for me. I was there to be a support and a presence for my family. And I was a prayerful presence. My sister had 3 or 4 years ago told me of a cemetery where she took me. And she said, "Sis, I want to be buried here." She said, "This is my holy place." Oh. It's a gorgeous little cemetery not far from my sister's home. And I pushed my family to get them there. Well, they're the happiest people on earth that we did get a place there because it's beautiful and they love going there to visit Patty.
Where is it?
It is in Hamburg, which is outside South Lyon.
Yes.
My sister lives in South Lyon.
Uh-huh.
And it's Holy Spirit Cemetery. It's a parish. Okay. And it's just gorgeous. There's a huge table of the Lord made out of granite. And Jesus sitting at the table with 12 stools around the table for the apostles. We had my sister, she died 2 weeks before she was 70 years old. We had my sister's 70th birthday party at that table. So I knew she had her resting place that she wanted. And during this pandemic and throughout the time I spent at home, caring for my family and taking care of my sister's personal needs after the funeral, my mantra, and I think this is what I would like to end with, has become, "Be still and know that I am God." Yes. Felt it, God, through this whole pandemic, through my whole sister's 5-month experience. My brother-in-law and the 2 boys did not want to let Patty go.
Oh.
So they spent time trying to have her rehabilitated. And it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, she's looking down on you right now. And I hate drawing this to a close, but you have been a gift in sharing such intimate and private moments with us. And I'm just very touched by your words and by your life, Mary Jane. And your other name was Leo, what was it?
No, Ann Henry.
Ann Henry.
Mom and Dad. That was my mom and Henry. Dad.
And I want to make that known because we have a lot of people, because this is going on YouTube. And there are people that see Adrian Dominicans, and they're looking at our stories, but they don't know you as Mary Jane Clark. Many of them know you as Ann Henry.
Oh my gosh.
We're trying to make sure we get both names on, if you have both names, and you were the same generation. So, we had none names. So
yes.
Anyway, okay, bless you. Thank you so much for your prompt response to my invitation to tell your story.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. And pretty soon we'll be unfolding into the same chapter.
Absolutely.
That's right. Let's hope we're in the same region. Okay, God bless you. And thank you ever so much.
God bless.